This day in sports history. It's July 13th, and on this day in 1971, Reggie Jackson hit a bomb that people still talk about today. Reggie Jackson was making his second appearance as an All-Star in '71. His American League team was desperate for a win. The Nationals had dominated this game with 8 straight wins in the Midsummer Classic. In the bottom of the third inning, the American League manager Earl Weaver called on Jackson to pinch hit for starting pitcher Vida Blue. Now, Jackson, never short on ego, was a little peeved about being called on so early. Why not save him until the 8th or the 9th to pinch hit, when the Stars come up to bat with a chance to win it with one swing? He kind of felt like he was being thrown away and wasted so early in the game. Now, the thing is, Jackson really wasn't even supposed to be an All-Star in this game. Tony Oliva had been selected but had to back out due to injury, and so Jackson, as the first alternate, was added to the club late. As he was packing up his gear to fly to Detroit for the game, his Oakland A's teammate Sal Bando told him, "Hey kid, don't embarrass us by going up there and striking out." So here's Jackson in the bottom of the third. The National League was up 3-0. Reggie picks up the story from there.
And Dock Ellis had to count a ball and 2 strikes on me. And so I got back out of the batter's box, and I choked up, first time in my life, like about a quarter of an inch to a half inch, because I said to myself, when I got out of the batter's box, I know Sal thinks I'm going to strike out. And to keep from striking out, I choked up a little bit, and Dock Ellis hung a slider. I mean, just a nothing, which is kind of a lazy fastball, which is a bad slider. And hit the ball right on the button, and bingo.
Reggie Jackson, batting .272 for Oakland. 17 homers. He's bounced back this year. 41 runs batted in. A fine all-around player. There's a long drive. That one is going way up. It is off the roof. That hit the transformer up there. A tremendous smash. Only 8 players have hit the ball over the roof here in Detroit. And Jackson nearly did it then, out of the ballpark.
Jackson's blast was officially measured as a 539-foot bomb. But if it had not hit the transformer, it would have gone a lot further. Pete Rose said it would have been hit out of Yellowstone Park. Jackson's 2-run nuclear blast was part of a 4-run third inning. They added 2 in the 6th, and they went on to win the game 6-4. It was the lone win for the American League in the 70s, and they would not win another one until 1983. On this day in 1941, golfer Vic Ghezzi won the PGA Championship twice. The 1941 PGA Championship was played at Cherry Hills in Inglewood, Colorado. The PGA played a match play event until it changed over to a stroke play event in 1958. But this was not just 18 holes of match play. All but the first 2 rounds were 36-hole match play events. And yeah, I get it. Some matches could be lopsided, such as Ghezzi's 8-7 win over Jimmy Hines in the quarters, and end a bit early. But the match just as easily could go the full 36 before a winner was decided. So in 41, 97 players showed up to play, and after a 36-hole qualifier, 64 players started heads-up match play battles on the 6th. So here we are on the 13th. The field had been whittled down to 2 players, Byron Nelson and Vic Ghezzi. Nelson had mowed down a murderer's row of Ralph Goldall, Ben Hogan, and Gene Sarazen to reach the final for the 3rd consecutive year. He was the defending champ as well. Now, Ghezzi was an 8-time winner on tour at this point, but he was still looking for his first major tournament win. The 36-hole final started pretty well for Ghezzi. A couple of birdies in the first 3 holes, coupled with a bogey by Nelson, put him up by 2 after the 8th. But 4 bogeys on the backside of the morning round left him down 1 after the first 18. Nelson applied some pressure with a trio of birdies on the afternoon front 9, and by the turn for home, he was 3 up. The tide turned quickly, though, with Nelson bogeying the 10th, Ghezzi birdieing the 11th, and then another Nelson bogey at 12 leveled the match. After a birdie at the 15th, which was their 33rd hole of the day, Ghezzi was one up. He faltered on the 17th, though, hitting a tree off the tee, and then he dunked his ball into the water on his approach, and the match was all square. Ghezzi missed a 4-footer on the final hole that would have won it for him. Instead, they marched on to their 37th hole of the day. Both made par, and it was on to the 38th. On the 38th, two beautiful approach shots by each man onto the green left both with short putts, but they were exactly identical length away from the cup. An official could not determine which was further away and hence who would hit first, so Nelson and Ghezzi decided to flip a coin to see who would putt first. Nelson won the flip, but as he stepped up to his ball, his foot hit Ghezzi's ball. Now, by rule, the hole should have been forfeited, and Ghezzi would have won. But Ghezzi was insistent that that's not how he wanted to win a golf tournament. He did not want his first major to be won on a rules infraction. So he put his ball back where it had been, and he told Nelson to putt. He did, and his putt slid by a few inches. Ghezzi walked to his ball, returned it to its original spot, and he hit it. His ball caught the right lip and dropped in for the win. Now, it's a good thing that it did fall. Rules officials were not happy with the flaunting of PGA guidelines, and they were ready to force Ghezzi to accept the win if he had not made the putt. For Ghezzi, it was his only major tournament win in his career. Nelson would win the PGA again in 1945. This episode is brought to you by Sterling Roastery. For several months you've heard me talking about the great products and scents offered by the Sterling Soap Company. And while there may not seem to be any correlation between soap and coffee, what is similar is the same care and attention to detail in delivering great products to their customers. Sterling Roastery will ship great-tasting beans or ground coffee, for whatever coffee-making process you prefer, right to your door. I gave their breakfast blend a try recently, and I can tell you, it was a great way to get my day kick-started with this smooth, medium blend. And just like their soaps, they have a variety to choose from. Give Sterling Roastery a try at sterlingsoap.com. On this day in 1972, a pair of NFL owners swapped their entire teams. Maybe not as salacious as two New York Yankee pitchers trading their wives. Maybe not as weird as a fictional character being traded for Al Michaels. And perhaps not as humorous as a player being traded for cases of beer or even himself. But this trade was a big one, and it is interesting. So Baltimore Colts owner Carroll Rosenbloom had made his money making clothing, and he was so successful that he was able to sell that business and retire at age 32 to pursue other interests. He invested in the production of Broadway shows. He bought a farm. His old college football teammate, Bert Bell, also happened to be the commissioner of the NFL at the time, and he encouraged him to invest $13,000 in the Baltimore Colts in 1953, which he did. Rosenbloom built the Colts into a winner within the decade, hiring Weeb Ewbank to coach the team, bringing Johnny Unitas in to play quarterback, and engineering a trade to add Don Shula to the roster. Success followed with a championship in 1958, Super Bowl appearances, and a win in Super Bowl V in 1971. He was also successful in helping build the league into what it became, a proponent of revenue sharing and television contracts. He helped guide the NFL and the AFL to a successful merger. Well, Rosenbloom was born in Baltimore, but by 1969, he was spending most of his time in either New York or Florida. He had issues with other owners in the league, such as Joe Robbie, who lured Shula away to coach the Dolphins with an outrageous contract. He was disenchanted with the city and its politicians that just didn't see the value in building his Colts a new stadium to replace the one that was falling apart. By late summer 1971, Rosenbloom was looking for a way out. Sure, his Colts were defending Super Bowl champs, but the 3 preseason games the Colts hosted prior to the 71-72 season, attendance was abysmal. Indications were he was frustrated by the 16,000 people coming through the turnstiles for the exhibitions, and he wondered if relocating the team would be good. He looked at Tampa as a possibility, a little less than a decade before the Buccaneers would make it their home. Maybe a short move somewhere else in Maryland. But there was resistance from the commissioner's office, now manned by Pete Rozelle. When Dan Reeves, the owner of the Los Angeles Rams, died in 1971, his family put the team up for sale, and Rosenbloom wanted to buy the team. He was ready to head to the sun and sand of the West Coast. He was also considering buying the LA Lakers. Well, his first thought is that he would buy the Rams and then let his son run the Colts. Rozelle vetoed that idea and instead suggested he sell the Colts and buy the Rams. But that would have triggered a nearly $4.5 million capital gains tax payment, which he wanted to avoid. But that did get the gears moving on another idea: a trade. Willard Keeland and Clem Ryan were two wealthy businessmen who agreed to buy the Rams for $19 million. But when it came down to brass tacks, they were about $5 million short. So they brought a third to the table for a three-way partnership. That man was Robert Irsay. When it finally came time to make the transaction happen, Keeland and Ryan dropped out, leaving Irsay with the full $19 million bill. No matter, he was a gambling man and he liked his odds. Irsay bought the Rams. He was hungry, famished for a taste of the NFL. He didn't care what was on the buffet, he just wanted a seat at the table. But while Robert liked to spend some time in Vegas on occasion and play baccarat, he wasn't really an LA guy. He was from Chicago, and so he was open to a trade. When the idea of trading the Colts franchise for the Rams franchise reached Commissioner Rozelle's desk, there was immediate opposition. But nobody could really think of a legal reason why it couldn't happen. And so, on this day in 1972, Carroll Rosenbloom traded his Baltimore Colts to Robert Irsay for the Los Angeles Rams in a straight-up deal. This episode is brought to you by Firefly Books, and with you being a sports fan just like me, here's 2 suggestions for your next great sports read. If you love basketball, then you need to add Dave Zarum's book, NBA 75, The Definitive History. Uncover untold stories of triumph, controversy, and the greatest stars of the game. From the league's humble beginnings to its modern glory, it is a courtside seat to 75 years of NBA history. And if you're a golf fanatic, then you gotta check out Matt Adams' book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget. I've used it as a reference in this podcast over the past year for lots of stories that I've done, and I can tell you from experiencing it, this is a great book. Relive 50 of golf's most memorable moments through the eyes of the legends themselves. It's the closest you'll ever get to walking the fairways with the greatest to ever play the game. Grab your copy of NBA 75 or The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, available from Firefly, wherever you get your books. On this day in 1993, it was a sad day for NASCAR and the state of Alabama, as race car driver Davey Allison died after a helicopter crash the day before. Allison was piloting the helicopter with Red Farmer in the passenger seat to Talladega for a test at the track. Allison didn't have a lot of flight time in this particular helicopter, about 10 hours or so, and he was attempting a difficult landing, downwind in a tight space surrounded by power lines and tall fences. As they got close to the ground, the aircraft oscillated side to side, rose 25 feet, and then it began to spin. The NTSB cited pilot error as the reason for the crash. Now, Farmer was seriously injured, but he survived, and he is still living, and at the age of 92 is still working on race cars in Pelham, Alabama. Allison, the son of longtime NASCAR driver Bobby Allison, suffered a severe head injury and died on this day in 1993. He was 32 years old. On this day in 1934, Babe Ruth hit home run number 700. Well, at this point, the 39-year-old Ruth was on the tail end of his career, and held just about every batting record in the Major League Baseball record books. He had been the all-time home run leader for a while, passing Roger Connor 13 years earlier in July 1921 when he hit career home run number 139. Number 700 on this day came against the Detroit Tigers' Tommy Bridges. It was a 2-run shot that gave the Yankees the lead, and they went on to win 4-2. The following day, the New York Times proclaimed that Ruth's record of 700 home runs would stand for all time. And yeah, a lack of long-term foresight, but to be fair, the closest to him at that time was his teammate Lou Gehrig with 323 career homers. Jimmy Fox had 248 at that point, and of Ruth's contemporaries, he would wind up being the closest to him on the all-time home runs list with 534. And on this day in 1979, the movie Breaking Away was released. Starring Dennis Christopher, Dennis Quaid, Jackie Earle Haley, and Daniel Stern, it's a coming-of-age story wrapped around a love of cycling and all things Italian. It also introduced people outside of Indiana to the wonder of the Little 500 bike race on Indiana's campus. The Little 500 is an actual event, and it is still raced every year, featuring teams of 4 racing on a quarter-mile cinder track. Men race 200 laps, and the women's race consists of 100 laps. Time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. Days on Earth were not always 24 hours. Scientists calculated that when life started to pop up on the planet 3.5 million years ago, that a typical day was about 12 hours. At that point in Earth's history, our moon was much closer and affected the spin on the planet. As the moon distanced itself from us, the Earth spun a little slower, and the days got a little bit longer. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
The Sports History Network, where legends live on and the past plays loud. Welcome to the place where history's proud. From gridiron glory to the hardwood stars, from the racetrack heat to Olympic bars. It's the voices, the stories, the moments you miss, told by fans and pros who live for this. Hook and Themic, the Sports History Network, where the past comes alive. Podcasts and blogs that keep the flame high. From Babe to Brady, Alley to the Dome. If it's history and sports, then this is the home. SportsHistoryNetwork.com, the headquarters of sports yesteryear.